Welcome to the In Search of More podcast. I am your host, Eli Nash. Join me weekly on my quest for more from myself and more from this world. We'll see you on the other side. Okay, all right. Welcome, Netanya.
Thank you.
So I'm sitting here with Netanya Light. Netanya Light, amongst other things, is also my sister-in-law, your sister Frady, and I have been married for a number of years. So that is how we met, but that's not the basis of you sitting here because last I checked, there's 4 other people on the planet who also have the same credentials, right? My wife's sister. So you're here because of your journey and your story, which we'll get into.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. So I think before we go into much, probably best to address the elephant in the room. This is way outside your comfort zone. Not that you look uncomfortable, but that you, like knowing you, a couple of years ago when you're doing more of your interior design work, it was uncomfortable for you to post something on Instagram, and today you're sitting down and recording conversation. So I know it's not your nature, and you're not in your comfort zone completely. So I
True.
figured address that. So what's up?
Yes, this is very much outside my comfort zone, and actually finding myself using a lot of tools that I've picked up along the way to be comfortable in a moment of discomfort. So I'm feeling comfortable in the discomfort. At the same time, I acknowledge that it is uncomfortable for me, and um, I'm a very private person. I shy away from being in the spotlight, and I get a little bit uncomfortable when there's too much attention on me. And I very much prefer one-on-one interactions or small group interactions. And the thought of this being put out to, a large audience is where my discomfort lies. I love having a one-on-one conversation, so I'm
This
good with
is a
this.
one-on-one
and
conversation.
and so that's what I'm focusing on. Like, this is a one-on-one conversation, and just really not focusing on the other part of it. The reason that I accepted this, I don't know how to call it, this,
Invitation?
yeah, invitation, and was really about something that was bubbling up inside of me, and a message I was hearing about that it's time to speak and share something about what I've been learning. And so that's why I'm here to share that. And I don't really even know exactly what's going to be shared. I didn't prepare what I'm speaking about. And my prayer is that whatever wants to be shared, that was driving me to accept this invitation, will be expressed and shared
Amen.
fully.
Amen.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'll say is it's my job during this conversation to make like the whole back half of the room disappear. The microphone, the lights, the computers in the back. Obviously not everyone's seeing that, but there is that in order to get this production. So if I do my job correctly, then those should disappear pretty quickly. So
Great.
number one. In terms of, I've had this thought that the people who should be talking are the ones who don't naturally want to speak. Like those who, my WhatsApp status says, be still when you have nothing to say. When genuine passion moves you, say it and say it hard. It's some quote from someone. And I think that, the reason it speaks to me, I as well can be like quiet, right? People who only know me on the podcast will see me talking all the time, but I'm not. That's not who I am regularly. I'm
Mhm.
often not talking at all. But when genuine passion moves me, I say it and I say it hot. And I think that a lot of people who talk for other purposes, like some people talk for connection or they talk for distraction or they talk whatever for whatever, so they end up being comfortable in these settings. Like I wasn't naturally comfortable in these settings. Those aren't necessarily the people who I don't want to talk about them. Everyone should talk. We're not trying to silence anyone, but the people who don't naturally gravitate to the mic may deserve it more than anyone else.
Mhm.
So I also have a second theory, which I've shared, but it's been a while since I shared it, so I'll share it again. Is that like no one really enters the world quiet. Like there's no baby who's afraid to cry for his bottle, right? So no one enters the world quiet, wouldn't survive our first year of life. We weren't. But certain people speak from different places.
Mhm.
So some people speak like kind of from like almost like the tip of their tongue, like it wasn't a very deep thought. And other people speak from their depth. So someone who speaks from the tip of their tongue, if that's rejected, it's not personal. So they're never silenced because
Mhm.
they're only talking from the tip of their tongue.
Mhm.
But people who speak from their depths, if they've thought about something and it's sort of coming from a deep place and then they share it and that gets rejected, so then that feels very personal. And those are the people more likely to be silenced.
That I think, yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, very much.
Okay, so now you have permission to speak. Okay, so let's talk a little about your story. You live in LA today. Recently you started leading workshops, retreats, stuff at your home, like in healing, right? But there's two ways people get into the space of healing. One is they decide to go to 4 years of college at 20, 21 years old, because I'm sure they've had journey in the past. They get some sort of credentials and they say, I have these credentials, and therefore, right? And others do it through hard knocks of life. I know you didn't do it through the credentials. So let's get into your story
Mhm.
a little bit. Where do you want to start? Childhood, adulthood? Like where in the story should we pick up? Like what in your story do you feel is important that led you to becoming, let's use the word healer for lack of a better term?
Oh, where to start? I guess I can start with some elements of my childhood because it will help illuminate part of how I got here.
Good.
Um, I'm one of 9 kids, and I'm third oldest. So I was born into motherhood, so to say, a combination of my nature of just I'm a natural nurturer and super sensitive to the feelings and needs of those around me. And having 6 younger siblings and just always being in that role for as long as I can remember. Um, but before I even go into that part of it, something that I remembered recently about myself as a child is that um, I really, really, really loved being in nature, and that was where I felt the most at home and the most relaxed. And
What did that look like as a child?
so as a child, what I remembered and what I saw was I really didn't get enough of that. And my parents were nature people, and they would take us on nature hikes and do things out in nature with us. And so I give them a lot of credit for that because I'm sure that really nourished me and gave me a lot. But um, seeing myself as a child being in a classroom with bright fluorescent lights and stuck in a hard chair at a desk. I didn't know it as a kid, but I see it now. I mean, I couldn't express that knowing as
Right.
a kid, but looking back now and seeing how really where I thrived and felt at peace and felt like I can be myself and was in nature. And so, yeah, that looked like being in the backyard and swinging on the swing and being in the grass and, uh, you know, sledding down the front yard in the winter. And so from my early childhood, I was always very deeply connected to nature.
Why is that an important detail?
It's an important detail because what my journey has brought me to, a lot of it has to do with nature and plants and our connection with nature and how us as the human species forgetting our connection to nature has is really a big part of the cause for a lot of sickness in this world
Right.
and our disconnection from
Yeah,
it.
we think there's nature and then us.
They think, yeah, we think we're separate from nature and we are nature just as much as a tree is nature. So our forgetting that has really caused us a lot of sickness.
Yeah, a few weeks ago, we went, and you probably know because you know. So my family went like on a camping trip, and there was nothing. It's this company called Getaway, and they have these little, I don't know, call them containers or something that they have in the forest. They'll put like 40 or 50 of them. Then you rent it out, and you're
Mhm.
there. And I mean, it's stocked. It's nice. It's clean, but there's no real food, and there's nothing there to do in the campgrounds. Like absolutely nothing outside of a little fire pit. There's nothing, and the kids were more entertained there than with any amount of toys that we have on the weekend, just sitting there playing with the rocks and the sand and the branches and the trees. Like that was, I mean, endless hours
Yeah.
of amusement. And I was like, wow, they should make toys this good. Like if
Yeah.
only they made a toy that could captivate children for as long as rocks and sand could.
Yeah. And listen, God gave us these toys for our children, and then we go and manufacture plastic toys and anyway, yeah, totally.
Okay, so that was the nature portion. And in terms of the
Yeah, so that piece ends up being important to where I am now because on my journey of learning more about myself and where it is that I can offer something to this world, nature happens to be a big part of it.
meaning as part of your healing and working with as part of your healing and working with other people, you're also incorporating nature as much as possible
Yeah.
into that.
Yeah, and not just I'm not talking just about nature and plants and trees and the sun and these are all healing tools, but also us as nature, understanding our own experience here through the lens of nature.
Say more.
Um, there's many things to say about it. I'll go into um, women. Okay, I'll just zone in on the menstrual cycle, right? Um, this is a natural cycle that happens for women, and it's a very important part of our life that Western society has done a very good job at disconnecting women from. It's something that is an inconvenience. It's annoying. We complain about it. We dread it coming. We we don't want to look at what comes out of our body, and definitely the men in our lives don't want to look at it and don't want to have anything to do with it. And so there's all this negativity thrown at natural cycle that is what I see as one of the most beautiful natural cycles there is. And once I opened myself up to seeing what it was about, the the beauty of it and the sacredness of it and the gift of it every month has been transforming for me. And I really do my best to share about it with as many women as I come into contact with because it's just like such a beautiful thing we were given that completely gets thrown in the garbage if we're not aware of it. And if it's being looked at through the lens that Western society has kind of like taught us.
Interesting. And it does, right? It does follow like a, I know like women will often menstruate like on the moon, like the full moon or something, like sometimes be connected to it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
regardless, it's a part of it's
Yeah,
part of
that's
the
a
moon
big
cycle.
part of it. Like actually, like I can speak about it for 3 hours.
Let's not do 3 hours, but I want to hear something about it.
But I don't want it to be just about that today. It's but I can do a separate podcast about that maybe if women want to know about it and if men are interested. But
You had me
it's
correct when you grouped me in the the men category just a few minutes ago. So
oh yes,
yes, but
it's
but I'm interested in hearing some.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's for me reconnecting to what that cycle is and why it comes and the gift that it is has changed my entire relationship with it. Has I don't take Advil anymore for my cramps. It helped me to rewire my entire relationship with pain. Um, and it's given me a true appreciation for it. It's like I'm excited and I'm happy for this process, and I understand the gift that it is. And so that's that nature piece that I'm tuning into about myself, that it lights me up and I'm passionate about it, like seeing all of our own cycles and our own bodies as nature, our own processes
Right.
as nature. And when we understand the nature, then we can work with it instead of working against it. And then things in our life just start to flow because we're working with the actual cycles of nature that God created. And why are we fighting against our own nature?
Okay, so actually, I do have interest in it for a couple of reasons. Number
Mhm,
one, um, like I've kind of shared here, through the podcast that like I've been kind of on my own journey with Judaism, whether it's adding Shabbos or being a little more careful with kosher or things like that. And as part of that, recently, um, my wife and I, Freddie and I, have been more careful with like kind of the laws around family purity as well. So understanding some of these things as well, like it has been something coming up in my personal life. So that's interesting.
mhm,
But secondly, there was I was speaking to, and maybe this would be a good way to ask the question that can have you further elaborate on some of the points. So I was speaking to Michael DeSanti.
mhm,
Michael leads sweat lodge ceremonies, as you may know. He was here on the podcast not long ago, and one of the things he spoke about is that if he's leading women through a sweat lodge, so he'll have the women sit outside the tent. And this is not his thing. He was trained in the Lakota tradition, leading sweat lodge ceremonies. And if a woman is on her period, then they don't come into the sweat lodge.
mhm,
And he said one is obviously physically, right? They're losing blood and it's not as safe. But he said that's the main reason, like the spiritual reason, is that there is the sweat lodge is meant for a cleansing and purification, and the woman is going through her own cleansing and
mhm.
purification at the moment. So there's no reason to do it in the sweat lodge, but actually being right around the sweat lodge could have a very profound experience. And he gave some stories of people who actually did, meaning they came to a sweat lodge ceremony with him. They were disappointed when he told them, "Hey, if you're on your period, you can't be inside the sweat lodge." And he just said, "Listen, participate in the ceremony, listen to the songs. You're just going to do it right outside the lodge. Like you're right there, you're on the fire, you're in this experience. You're just not in the lodge. You're out of the lodge."
Mhm.
And he said afterwards they shared they had profound experiences, and he was connecting that to them being on. It's like you have your internal purification process going. You don't need the external of the sweat lodge.
Yeah,
Does that does that jive with some of what you've understood
very,
about this
very
process?
much. Very much. What I've come to learn about it is that we as women get the opportunity every single month to go through our own personal ceremony of cleansing and purification. And it's not just the physical element of it. Yes, there's the physical element of cleansing and purifying and purging like that which is no longer needing to be held onto by the body. And it's very, very much a spiritual ceremony as well, where we get, if we're tapped in to what's happening, we have the ability to cleanse and purify all the energies that we have stored throughout the month and release them and release them and release them. And the womb is a it's a container, it's an empty space. And the womb holds a lot of our energy that we don't process and that we hold on to. And so it's not an accident that the womb goes through the process every month, and that's where energy is stored. And and then we get to cleanse and purify. And once that ceremony is complete, there's this beautiful empty space physically and spiritually for a woman to now start her new month with, okay, I have all this space here. What do I want to create this month? What sort of energies do I want to bring in? What sort of energies do I want to work with? What do I want to create this month? And so it's really a time to connect with that energy of creation. And so every month we get to go through this process, like our bodies in a way are forcing us to go through it, and we have and inviting us to come along for the opportunity to, okay, cleanse, purify, now fresh. What do I want to create now? So we're constantly going through the process of creation, cleansing, purifying, creation,
And how do
cleansing,
you
purifying.
understand the pain and discomfort as part of this process? If you do, if you
Yeah. So the pain reminds me that I'm alive and the gift that life is and how lucky I am to be here. And the sensation of pain can be interpreted as something negative or it can be interpreted as, wow, how lucky I am that I get to feel. And there was a time in my life uh, where I completely blocked myself from being able to feel as a protective mechanism for not wanting to feel, for not wanting to get hurt anymore. So I just built a shield around myself. And actually, being inside that shield, yes, it protected me from getting any further hurt, but it also blocked me from being able to feel. For 10 years, I wasn't even able to cry.
oh,
And I am a very watery person. I cry very easily. I can see a commercial and start crying. I can think something about something and start crying. And that so that was a big indication for me, like something was being blocked and stopped.
you
Um,
got like super duper power Advil. Like,
yeah, just Advilled my whole entire system.
right.
And when I started to recognize that that's an issue, like that I felt tears wanting to come out and they couldn't come out. And so I started to little by little break through that very, very thick shield that that I had put up to protect myself. And when I started being able to feel again, and started being able to cry again, there was no better feeling in the world. Even if it was pain, even if it was tears, I welcomed it. It was like, wow, like actually not feeling was so much more painful than feeling pain.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just pain that I was able to feel. Now I was able to feel joy. Now I was able to feel gratitude. Now I was able to feel pride. Now I was able to feel so many things that I was completely blocked from feeling. And so, feeling pain when I have my cycle now, I welcome, listen, like, I'm not saying, here, give
Right.
me
No, I
pain.
understand.
I'm not asking for pain, but it does come along with my cycle. That's how it is with me. So I accept it and welcome it and I love on it and said thank you because the pain reminds me I'm alive. It reminds me that I can feel, and it reminds me that I carry this beautiful ability to carry life. And I have carried life. I have two incredible daughters, and it reminds me, like, it connects me with them every month as well. Like, wow, because of this cycle, I was able to bring these beautiful souls into the world. So the pain is still there, but my experience of it is completely different.
In recovery, I had a friend who used to say, "Pain is required, suffering is optional."
Yeah, I
Yeah.
heard that a few years back, and I really it gave me a lot of it was a golden nugget for me.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, today, I mean, you as well. A lot of the modalities I work with, and I'm sure you work with, have a component of pain
Mhm.
in it, whether it's the cold or the heat or even rape, which has a burning sensation at the beginning and sometimes strong pain and many others, right? There is a painful, um, there's pain at the beginning, and somehow that's an important part, important element
Yeah.
of it. So, okay, that's neat. So you mentioned that for a 10-year period, you were kind of frozen,
Mhm.
right? So what led to that? What were you protecting yourself from?
Well, I going back to more the beginning of my story,
You were talking about
I
motherhood before you detoured into nature.
yeah. So you know, as a child, being one of 9 kids was overwhelming for me. I see it all now. As a kid,
Hmm.
it just what was. It was the only thing I knew. So I see that part of my protective mechanism for the overwhelm of the energy, it was just so much energy for me, was to make a little bit of a wall of protection from the energy to myself. And I think that's where it started. Uh, then it got bigger and thicker when I entered into adulthood. I got married really young. I was 19. Uh, I was raised ultra Orthodox, and that was the path, and you know, it was what I knew, and it was very exciting and beautiful to me, and, um, I got married, it was I was in love, I got married from, like, a very, very I entered the relationship from a very pure, open place, and, uh, the experience for me it was hard on me, that the combination of our personalities was it was difficult for me, and, we came from different upbringings, obviously, you know, any 2 people who come together come from
Mm.
different upbringings, and my way of coping with, I guess, his personality was to build this wall of protection, and, um, yeah, and then after more and more and more time passed, I started seeing, like, these indications that something was up. I couldn't cry. Um, I wanted to. I remember going in the
So
bathroom
this you noticed in your marriage?
in my marriage,
Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
I remember going in the bathroom middle of the night, just having so much welling up inside me, and sitting on the toilet, and the tears couldn't come out. I scrunched up my face to, like, make maybe if I scrunch up my face, it will help the tears come out, but I could it was stuck, couldn't come out. Um, and then how did I get there? What was I saying?
You were talking about how in childhood you built up a wall and then
Yeah, so
you built it a little
yes,
thicker and stronger during
exactly.
marriage.
So at that point, I realized that the wall was super thick. I had no idea how to approach that, though. Um, but I did get to a that was the point where it was a turning point in my internal life, where I was 29 years old. I had been married for 10 years, and I saw 2 clear paths ahead of me. I recognized that I was, feeling very much like a Walking Dead person, and that experience was horrible. Like, I felt like a ghost, like walking in the shadows of life,
Mhm.
uh, and I also felt so disconnected from myself, like I just didn't know who I was anymore, and, uh and so I had this moment with myself, and I look back at this moment, I'm like, "Wow, like, that was a moment of grace." I feel like it was a moment of grace from God to even have experienced a moment like that, to be able to have the vision and see what I saw was grace, and that moment was seeing 2 paths ahead of me, and one path was a life of martyrdom, where I just resigned to the reality of my life, of what was, accepted it, and just continued to trudge along in that Walking Dead person experience, but it wouldn't shake anyone else's life up. It would, keep my kids safe in this family unit, and it wouldn't upset my now ex-husband, then husband, and then beyond that, our families, and then beyond that, the community and society.
When you say shake them up in a negative way
In
or
a
negative?
negative way,
Okay,
in a
right.
negative way. The culture I was raised in, Jewish, ultra Orthodox, religious, Chabad, there's a lot of focus on the family unit, and it's all about family. And so divorce is not so, it's not even, then I got divorced 8 years ago, and but this epiphany or vision came to me when I was 29, and now I'm 41. So that was 12 years ago.
Mm.
Um, Now it's more accepted as,
A
it's
possibility, yeah.
yeah, and then it just seemed to me, the thought of it made me almost want to just crumble and die, because what I would have to be facing and what I knew I would have to be facing pretty much on my own because nobody around me would be a fan of it
Right.
and be supportive of it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I knew that. I knew that. And so to be in the position I was in where I felt like a walking dead person, I felt like my spirit was hanging by a thread. I felt very, very weak. Weak because I was disconnected from my own power, from my own strength. I just didn't know how I would do it, how I could do it.
Right. It's actually right around the time that I came into the family. In April will be 12 years since I met Frady. I mean, we dated for 5 years before we got married, but that's
Mhm.
when I started seeing things. I remember the first time I met you, I observed Frady. It wasn't the first time because you were in Miami for something. You're at one of your sister's houses for a Shabbos, and I observed Frady that I didn't feel like your voice was your voice. Like that disconnection, like it was felt. So yeah,
Yeah,
I get it.
actually, my kids showed me a little video clip from back when I lived in Crown Heights before I moved to LA 14 years ago, and my girls were maybe 2 years old and 5 years old during this video. I think it was one of their birthday parties where the video was taken, and I'm in the kitchen, and I'm, like, holding the cake, and I'm, like, talking to the girls, and it was maybe, like, a 15-second video, and I watched the video, and my heart broke for myself then, because my voice was so muted. It was such a whisper. And I just it was so clear to me seeing the video, like, wow, like I really was like it was like I was getting by on like 3% of the oxygen that out of 100%.
Yeah.
So yeah. Um
So you're talking about
so
how
yeah, I had this moment of grace where I saw
two
two paths
paths.
ahead of me. One was this path of martyrdom where I was just giving up on my life. And something inside me started to scream when I saw that path. Like I was not born to be a martyr. I did not come all the way here onto this earth to martyr my life away. And then I immediately saw the life of somebody very, very close to me, um, where the woman, the wife, the mother had martyred her life. And I saw that by being around her a lot, that she had resigned to a lot of things in her life. And I recognized it because of the place where I was at. Like I was at the place where I had kind of 98% martyred up until that point, and that 2% that I hadn't was the part that was screaming like, no.
Right.
Uh, and I recognized that in her because like you can easily spot where a person who is where you once were or where you are at the moment. You could just sniff them out immediately. So I recognized that she had martyred her life and she was a lot older than me. And there was no joy, no true joy. There was no true love. Like she loved on her family, but it was more from a place of it was her real love, but it was lacking like the juice of love,
Hmm.
like that. And she just was locked in this. I saw her spirit was just locked in this cage. And I looked at her life and I was like, no, I don't, I will not choose that life. So she was like 40 years older than me. I'm like, I'm not choosing that path. And then I saw the other path, and the other path was so freaking scary. It was just this big empty void of unknowns and no idea. Just no guide, no path ahead of me, no just like this dark forest almost, like dark. And those are my two paths. What do I choose? And so I went back and forth and I felt one. And then I felt the other, and then I felt one, and I felt the other. And what I got to was when I felt myself in the martyr path and saw the path of my life of staying in a relationship that really wasn't serving me, it wasn't healthy for me. versus the path that was so, 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 so scary. Um, the path of staying and not shaking everything else up around me made me feel in my body. I got a physical sensation in my body like I'm about to collapse and die right now. Physically, I started feeling that. I start almost blacking out. Like I think I'll just collapse and die right now. Like I can't even see how I could take last till I'm 70 years old on a path like this
Right.
without dying first.
And you saw it as the only option on that path.
Yeah. Yeah, because I really had at that point, 10 years in, I had hit so, 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 so many walls and turned so many stones over that like there were no more avenues to explore. Um, so then the other path was like, okay, so is it gonna be me?
Mm.
Another path was like talking to me, like, and I was like, I have no idea what that is, but I know I can't choose the other path. And I have no idea what this empty dark path is. No idea. I just know that's scary. And then a few days later, or maybe it was the same day, I can't remember. I had another moment of grace where I remember exactly where I was standing in my bedroom and the bathroom door was open and I had I was just seeing like towards the window in the bathroom and just seeing outside to the light. And all of a sudden I was seeing myself at the end of my life as an elder woman and looking back at the life that I had lived. And what I saw, well, first I what I felt was immense pride. And then what I saw was that I had worked really hard in my life, like toiled with the good kind of toil, not the kind that exhausts you and makes you feel like collapsing. The toil that I planted seeds, and now I'm looking and seeing that those seeds have turned into these beautiful trees that bear fruit. And I'm looking at this life that I lived and the work that I have planted and that's blossomed and feeling immense pride and like, wow, like I'm so happy that I lived the life that I lived, that I gave what I gave. And that moment has been that vision has been pulling me through to this very moment.
Awesome.
And it's very, very powerful for me. Very, very powerful for me. And so that was like the start for me of my entire healing journey, having that connection with me as an elder.
So let's talk about some of the like kind of the unknowns on the way, right? I
Hmm.
mean, you alluded to the fact that there's very little support for the decision, right? Not communally, not within your family, obviously not your husband. Your kids are thrown through something, obviously too young to support in any case, but that that challenge and then a number of others along the way. So can you speak to some of like what those unknowns
Oh,
were and what some of those challenges were?
yeah, sure. Everything was an unknown. Every single thing was an unknown. Um, the only known was that I had to take a jump off of this cliff. That was the only knowing that I had. And I'll start with just I didn't have support from my family, from those closest to me, which, besides for not having support and that being challenging and difficult, uh, it was it was a real punch in my gut for me. And
You're
and
saying
that
emotional support.
I- I'm saying that emotionally to me,
No,
how
not
it
having
felt.
the emotional support of your
Yeah,
family. Yeah,
not
yeah.
having the emotional support of my family was a punch in my gut, because those are the people who I let in closest to me in my life, who I trusted, and it was like, and I had been a very strong support system to my family of origin for many, many years, and been the one to, with my arms out, saying, "Come, I'll hold you. Come, I'll hold you. I got you. Just come." In a way, I was my home was a safe haven for a lot of my family throughout the years that I was married and had a home of my own. So it just felt like a betrayal. Like, what are you like you're going to just turn your back on me when now I could use some support? So on top of all the I didn't expect that piece. I definitely didn't expect it. And I understand how it happened and it's not of a fault of their own. I didn't share with anyone in my family as I was going through the challenges in my marriage and my own personal challenges during those years. I didn't share with anybody, and because I was busy supporting everybody, I was like, I'm not going to burden them with my
Right.
stuff. I got this. I got this. I got this. I can take care of myself. That was always my. I don't know where I picked that up. No, actually I do know it was in the womb
Mm.
that I made that decision that I got me. Um, but yeah, I walked through life since the womb with I got me, I got me, I got me. You don't have to worry about me. I'll take care of me. But everything kind of came to a head at my life in that point, and I really did need some support. And so it felt like a big betrayal. So I didn't have the emotional support from my family um, until they caught on and understood. I filled them in on all the gaps, and then they understood what was going on, and then they jumped in with their support. And um, but for that very difficult period of the initial stages of going through divorce, I really was on my own. The other unknown was financially. How am I going to get by? How am I going to support myself, me and my two daughters? And I was a stay-at-home mom for most of my marriage, and that was my joy. And that was something my ex-husband and I decided that was what my role would be. And I wouldn't change that for the world. Um, I never wanted someone else to be raising my babies. I always wanted to be the one there as a constant for them. And but it did leave me in a very vulnerable position at this stage of my life. And I had a little bit prior to coming to the stage of going through the process of divorce, I had gone through a training to be a birth doula because ever since the
Knowing
birth
you were going through divorce or just
no, before
oh,
I mean,
okay.
things were already,
Unraveling.
unraveling, but I was realizing, like, there's something I need to be sharing with the world, like, what is it? And when I really tuned in, it was like, oh, like, I just love the world of birth and the miracle that it is, and ever since I had my own 2 girls, like, it just opened that up for me, and I was like, I wanna be part of that process and be supporting women. And I grew up with a mother she's a birth doula, and so my whole childhood and she was always having babies, and she was always going to births, and it just felt so it was so much a part of my world, and I had so much love for it, so I went and took a training. But even that, like, okay, so I'm getting divorced, I can't even be a birth doula anymore if I'm a single mother and, home with 2 small daughters. Who's gonna stay with my kids on a moment's notice if I have to run to a birth in the middle of the night? Who am I
Right.
gonna call? I didn't have any family living in LA then. And even if I did, who said they wanna sign up for coming and, drop of a hat and coming and taking care of my kids? Everyone's got their own life and responsibilities. So even that I had the training and I had already started doulaing, and, that wasn't even something like, uh, that I could continue with. I had to
Right.
put that down and say, "Okay, that's for another time in my life when my girls are bigger and I can, uh, leave whenever I need to leave to be by a birth." So that financial element was very scary for me. Um, and then, yeah, all the details, like, my children, how are they gonna take this? How is this gonna be for them? I actually, from the moment of that vision until I actually got divorced, uh, it took 4 years.
Oh, wow. Okay, I didn't know that.
4 years. And in those 4 years, I literally climbed every wall, turned over every stone, tried more avenues and more avenues to see, can I make this work so that I don't have to choose the path of divorce, because put everyone else aside, I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to do that to my children. And I felt that it was me doing it. I was the one who was going to be causing this whole process. L- As I moved through it and learned more about how it even transpired and the whole picture of it, I got to understand, no, I didn't cause that. That, this started a long time ago. That's what it came to, is a reality I had to accept. This really wasn't working. You can't, fit a square peg into a round hole, and just accepting that.
Right. The divorce
Sometimes,
kind of chooses itself.
yeah. And it was just about me accepting it, the reality of it, and then dealing with what
Right.
is.
Although I don't think I've ever quoted him here. I heard Monis Friedman say divorce is never an option. Like it just sometimes becomes the only choice.
Right. Yeah, that's very much how it was for me. Like, I never ever thought of divorce while I was married. Even when I had that moment of not while I was married, up until a certain point, but for years and years and years and years and years, I didn't even think of divorce, even when things were really, really difficult. And it wasn't an option in my head. My mind didn't even go there. Yeah, it only went there when really there was just no other way.
Okay, so let's go to that because I kind of got to um, know you and your family better, like probably right after the divorce, right? Um, see, what year did you get divorced?
2016.
Okay, so that makes sense. So Freddie and I got married 2017,
Right.
right? So it was um, at that time that I was reluctantly welcomed into the family and got to know some of the
What
some
do you mean
I'm joking, I'm
reluctantly?
joking. Some of the others. I got to know some of the others, and you were in that state. Um, it was far from pretty at that state. Like it was obviously a difficult. Um, so can you talk to some of that, like what the emotions of it more?
Of that part of the process? Like when you came into the family?
Well, right after divorce, not so much about me. I'm just
Right
saying
after
that yeah,
divorce?
that's what I noticed. That's what I observed is like being in that state. Right, it's easy for someone to look at you today and you're carrying yourself well and you're speaking clearly and things like that, but that wasn't where you were at all 7 years ago,
Right.
right? Like very far from it. So I thought it'd be helpful to bring someone to those emotions because it wasn't okay, this doesn't work. I'm going to this other path. I have these few unknowns that get sorted out after 2.5 months,
Right.
and now I'm sailing. There
Mhm.
was a lot of confusion, um,
Yeah.
a lot of confusion through there. So in your case, I mean, this is a little bit different conversation than I typically have because I know some of the answers to my questions. I want to ask
Right.
them. I just want you to go where you're going.
Yeah. I mean, there's I can speak of the emotions, but broader than that, I'll start off by saying I was really, really lost from myself. And that caused, like, a waterfall of, that manifested itself in my life in a myriad of ways. Um, and it was painful to be disconnected from myself, and it was hard for me to be disconnected from myself. I felt very weak and at the mercy of what was thrown at me.
Right.
And and it was and I was so sensitive to what was being thrown at me that anything that was thrown at me would easily knock me off my center, and I just felt like I was being thrashed around in the waves, and okay, which wave is coming next? Like, I just knew another wave was coming, and I was just kind of flailing. Um, and so my life felt like a roller coaster, and very out of control. Internally, like, my emotions were all over the place. Um, and with all that, I had a very, very strong resolve to be an anchor for my children at that time. So it was navigating, being calm, being a rock, being a support for my kids for whatever it is that they're going through, while at the same time dealing with crazy
Right.
ups and down, mostly downs, but like crazy emotions and um crises that I was, I felt like I was almost in a boxing ring at times, like just, you know, okay, what's the next punch that's going to be thrown at me feeling, and I'd put on the strong me. I was able to do that for my kids, but then after I'd put them to sleep at night, I'd go into my room, close the door, and there was no resemblance of that strong me anymore. It was just a lot of feeling powerless.
Right. So I sat here with Christian de la Huerta a few months back. Christian de la Huerta's done, he's led breathworks for about 30 years. And I remember asking him what challenges, like I don't know if it was what's the most common or maybe the most challenging challenges that he sees amongst people.
Mhm,
And I think was what's the most common, and where he went to is when people are stuck in like victimhood, right? When
mhm,
people get into that state, kind of similar to what you described, like the world is throwing punches at me. What's going to come next?
mhm,
A feeling of weak and powerlessness, but it's all happening to the person, and um, like that shift is a very hard one for people to make, and probably what's inspired me most about watching your story is how deep you were in that state of, with good reason. I'm not with good reason, right? There were a lot of explanations for why you would feel that way, but at the
mhm,
same point in time, there was there were other options. They were hard to find. There were small doors in the corner.
mhm,
You really had to get out the microscope to find them, but they existed. Like you shared earlier when you were talking about your family, um, used the word betrayal, right? Their
mhm,
family not supporting you, but then when you came to the resolution of it, there was, hey, I never shared,
mhm,
right? Like that was my decision. Where oftentimes through someone's journey, they never arrive at that. They're always in the, my family betrayed me, or this happened and that happened, and never the, hey, what's a personal responsibility? What is the thing that I didn't do that now, not to blame, actually, it's actually a very empowering
mhm,
um, perspective, because like, hey, I wasn't doing this and now I could do this, and then I'm home free. Like I don't need
mhm,
anyone else to change. So yeah, I figured to talk a little bit about that victimhood, because um, I've probably heard from about 10 women over the course of my life that they were married to the biggest narcissist in the world. Right? I'm not saying you ever said that. You've been very respectful of your ex-husband on this, um, during this conversation and throughout all I've known you as well. Um, but I've heard that from many people, right? And
mhm,
I'm sure one of them is saying the truth, but not all of them could be,
mhm.
right? But sometimes it feels that way. It feels like we've ended up in a situation that is literally the worst
Right.
that anyone has ever experienced, in their life. And sometimes it can feel that way, and we can get to a certain place, and finding that finding that path out, finding that door, is hard to find. So, being that you agree with me that you were in that place,
Mhm.
so how did you find the door out?
I really wanted to shift. I just didn't know how to, but the desire was there. So I'll start with saying that. Um, I recognized that I felt weak and powerless. And when I really, really tapped into my truest self, I felt strength there. And actually, being a mother uh, was the one area of my life where my strength was able to be present throughout all of this, and where my confidence was still, I still held confidence in my abilities as a mother, I was very confident in trusting my maternal instinct, my maternal knowing about what my children needed, about how to be there for them. And so I really think that that was the thread that I was able to pull, to learn from,
Right.
and to spread it into the other areas of my
If
life.
I can be this here, then I can be
Right.
somewhere
That
else.
means I do have the ability to be strong. I do have the ability to be confident in my abilities and trusting in my knowing. But for some reason, it's completely like shut down or blocked in all these other areas of my life. So I started to borrow from that place. And it was I was going to therapy at the time. And I think it
It's a dangerous
was
place to go. No.
therapy was yeah. So but I was going to therapy and I remember my therapist pointing out to me, I think she was the one who pointed out to me, like, and how do you feel about, being a mother and your, your abilities and this and that. And all of a sudden, my entire body language, my voice, my tone, everything changed. I noticed it. Like it was noticeable. Like my voice became stronger. I sat straighter. My feeling in my body was like this feeling of strength and I think she was the one who pointed out to me, like, it's interesting, like you're so strong and confident in this area, you know? She just like made a comment
Right.
about it. And I said, "Yeah, I am." Because I know, like I know what my kids need and I know what kind of mother I am. That no matter what, like I'm there for my kids. They're my they're my first and foremost. I'm responsible for them. I'm nurturing them, I'm loving them, I'm giving to them, like, I'm in tune with them, and, like, it really was, like, looking back at my story, like, my being a mother saved me. Being a mother saved me.
Which is where your story started, right? When you were talking about that at the beginning.
Yes, I was born into motherhood.
Right.
Yeah, and, so because being mother was always a place for me that I know without a shadow of a doubt that I know how to mother.
Your kids are gonna have the final say on that, you know
Of
that? I'm
course,
joking.
and, they I'm not perfect, but I know what it means to be mother.
Right.
Yeah. So, so I started borrowing from that a little bit. It was, think of all the areas of my life where I walk and navigate and have to show up, and then the area of mother. There's one piece that's mother, and then there's all these other areas. So that's a lot of area that I have to start to embody and incorporate my power, my strength, my
Confidence.
confidence, um, my autonomy, and my wisdom, my sense of knowing. So it took a long time, a long, long time, but it's really started with the willpower. That I don't want to live the rest of my life with this feeling and with this experience of feeling powerless and feeling weak and feeling at the mercy of what's coming and what's being thrown at me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I've, um, noticed with you and with a lot of others who are just going through, like, a separation and divorce, right? Because I have the, distinct benefit of getting calls from people when they're in distress
Mhm.
for whatever reason. And, so I hear the stories and I see the patterns in the stories, or try to, and, one of those is, like, the shift happens when someone recognizes, like, where they need to be oriented, where it needs to be oriented in order to change their life is inward, right? It often starts right afterwards. It's, hey, if only I can get my ex to be more accommodating with the schedule. If only I can get my ex to send me a few more shekel. If only I can get my ex
Mhm.
to, you know, move to the city I want to move, or if only I can get my family to do X for me.
Mhm.
Right? If only I can, if only, then suddenly my life would be good.
Yeah.
And that dance is played out for a period of time, unfortunately for some people until the end of their life.
Mhm.
Right? If only I can change everything on the outside, everything on the inside would feel good. And then some people orient inwards and say nothing has to change on the outside for everything for everything to be able to change on the inside. And then when that changes, then magically the outside seems to change
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So that's a journey I'd love to talk about.
Mhm.
And also, in your case, plant medicine has become a super important part um, of your life. So I'd love to kind of weave that
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, yeah, it flows right into that because that was the progression actually. I got one more very important tip from my therapist at that time. In She gave me, I'm a very visual person, and she gave me a sort of like a visual exercise and said, "Try this." And she said, "Imagine every time that something's being thrown at you, right? That's your experience of it. Um, you are in a helicopter. You're at Niagara Falls. Have you been to Niagara Falls?
I
Okay.
have it.
You're at Niagara Falls. So Niagara Falls, like it's this crazy whole like huge section of waterfalls with water pouring in like crazy force, crazy power. It thunders, and you're at Niagara Falls, and you're in a helicopter. Okay, the falls are happening. You get to choose where you are. Your helicopter can get sucked into the falls, and you can be obliterated. Um, you can stay above it and watch the falls happening. And you have that choice in every single one of these situations. So start to notice when you're getting sucked down by the falls. And when you recognize that you're sucked in, put yourself in the helicopter and go above it and watch it. And don't beat yourself up for getting sucked into the falls. The point of this exercise is not that you're not going to get sucked into the falls. The point of it is how quickly can you put yourself back up into the helicopter and start putting yourself back up in the helicopter. Start catching yourself faster and faster and
Right.
not being sucked under for as long. Just start with that. And it was an amazing, it really helped me, like that simple visual, because I started to become aware and recognize the feelings in my body, the tension, the rapid heart rate, my stomach clenching up, feeling like I need to call one of my closest family members and start, venting about the new drama that was happening and the new punch that was being thrown at me or the new crisis that I was dealing with, or just breaking down crying. And I started to do this exercise and I started to have crazy awareness very quickly about, oh, where am I now? Oh, I'm under
Right.
the falls. Okay, let me put myself in the helicopter. And I started doing it and getting better at it and better at it and better at it. So that was a very big piece for me that started to help me to shift.
Right. The reason I'm smiling is because as you're talking, I'm being brought back to an ayahuasca journey I once had where it was like, okay, like, we're going to play a game. Right. And the game is, can you breathe through that? Can you breathe through that? It's a game of life. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, can you breathe, can you breathe through that?
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, over and over, just like for hours, like it threw me through different experiences,
Right.
and some which happened and some which felt like they were happening,
Mm-hmm.
like some which happened in real life and brought me back there, and some which felt like they um, were happening. Like for a moment, for a breath in that experience, I was a billionaire. For a breath in that experience, I was a pauper. Right. And it's like, could you breathe through that? Could you breathe through that? Can you breathe through that? And it was almost like that is the game of life.
Right.
It's like, okay, we're gonna go in, and the only thing you gotta do is like there's gonna be experience and just breathe in and out. And what breathe in and out means essentially is take in the full experience and then let it all out. Like don't attach to any of it. Like there's something rough that happened. Okay, it's tough and painful in the moment, but there's no attachment. The suffering is the attachment. But
Mm-hmm.
what was interesting through that journey, and then I'll go back to you. You know, I was thinking about it and smiling, so I figured let me get it out and go back to you.
Yeah.
I'll purge this out. So was actually how the more the more beautiful experiences, quote unquote, were the ones that were much harder to breathe through,
Hmm.
were much, much more difficult. It was like the idea like praise is much stickier than criticism. Like criticism is like a thorn. And as soon as you get it, you just want to yank it out. And it's hard because like another thorn, so you pull it out, now it's stuck in your finger. So it's a little bit tough to pull out a thorn, but it's much tougher to get honey off you. Praise is like honey.
Right.
And then it's like some honey is put on us, and all we want to do is like massage it in
Right. Yeah.
more,
Yeah.
more and more. But now
Yeah.
that like that's stuck to us, that's stuck to us as well. So anyway, there was that thought. Can we breathe through that? And I felt like the analogy of the helicopter and the falls is kind of like the same idea. It's like,
Mhm.
can you breathe through that experience, or are you going to get sucked into it? Are
Mhm.
you going to get attached to it in
Mhm.
some way? Anyway,
Mhm.
back to you.
Yeah. So shortly after practicing that exercise and starting to gain some sort of awareness around what I was subjecting myself to by allowing
Mm.
myself to get sucked in all the time, I got introduced to plant medicine by you.
Indeed.
Thank you very
It-
much.
Indeed. You
Um,
paid me back quickly, by the way, because I introduced you to plant medicines,
mhm.
and then you very quickly introduced me to ayahuasca.
Yeah.
So the repayment was very, very quick.
Yeah, I was telling that it came up in conversation last night because I was talking about how the plant medicines led me directly to ayahuasca. They themselves, like the messages that I got after my second plant medicine journey, is this crazy, like magical, but now I understand like this is how the plants work. They're on their own mission of,
Mm.
getting people to come. But the message was and it wouldn't stop, like, screaming at me, like, "Go talk to your friend," the specific friend in LA about plant medicine. And I was like, "He's gonna think I'm trying to fix him, like, I'm not." Like, and I was resisting it, and it kept screaming at me, and then I call him, and we're talking, and I said, "I know this is gonna sound crazy. Have you ever heard of plant medicine journeys?" And he literally broke down crying. He's like, "Why are you asking me this?" And I was like, I just experienced a journey last week, and they keep telling me to come talk to you about it." And he's like, "You don't understand. This is crazy. I just sat in a plant medicine journey all weekend. I'm still with the group. We
Mm.
just did beach sunset yoga. Like I stepped away from the group to take this phone call. Like, this is nuts. I had no idea you were into this. It's just crazy. We need to sit and talk about this." So later that night, um, we spoke about it, and he's like, "Tell me about what you experienced." And I told him, and then he's like, "Oh, okay. That sounds beautiful. It's great that you did that. You need to come to ayahuasca." And I was like, "Well, tell me about ayahuasca." And he told me about it, and he's like, "They're having another ceremony, um, 2 months from now, Labor Day weekend. Come." And I was like, "I just did plant medicine a week ago. I don't know if I'm gonna be ready for another journey 2 months from now. It might be very soon for me. Let me feel it out." And I went home, and I asked myself, and I felt it out, and, like, within a week, there was a clear answer that came through that was like, "Go." And so it was just this direct connection of like the plant medicine just led me straight to
Right.
ayahuasca. And then, yeah, it just goes back in a circle back to you. Um, but it felt good that to share it back with you. Uh, still feels good.
Yeah.
But anyway, so shortly after starting to gain some sort of the first inklings of awareness around my own autonomy in any of it.
Was through the plants.
No, no, no. Doing that exercise with the helicopter
Oh,
in Niagara
okay.
Falls was the first little light bulb
Oh, I got you.
that it awakened in me, like, "Oh, I can
I
actually
have a choice
have
now.
I have a say here. I have a say here." So it woke that up. Then you told me about plant medicine, and, actually, before you told me about plant medicine, I remember, we had a conversation where I guess you saw that I'd been in therapy for years, and I guess you saw that I'd outgrown it, and before I saw it.
Frady saw that. Yeah.
Or oh, okay.
Frady saw that. She told me. She sent me to take care of it.
Okay,
That's
okay.
most of what I'm
Mm,
doing. So she sends me on the
this is the power couple here.
she sends me on the mission, I take care of it. No, so
Yeah, so I remember having a conversation where you delivered that message to me and you were like, "Listen, like, therapy is great for a certain stage of the process, but it's not it only leads you to a certain place. It can only take you so far. And once you get to that place, like, there's more beyond that."
right. Realistically, like I'd been in therapy for a long time and it only gets you so far. I'll tell you where you know where the drop off with therapy is spirituality.
Well, that's what you exactly what you
That's what I
said to
said
me.
then.
That's what you
Okay,
said. You
nice.
said,
And I was not talking about plants then.
"No, no,
I was
no.
talking
I
about
don't."
the 12-step program. Like that was my experience with the 12
Uh-huh.
steps.
Yeah, you didn't mention plants then. You
Okay.
just said to me beyond after therapy, there's spirituality, and I remember just being, like, so confused when I heard that because I was like, "What do you mean by that? Spirituality?" Like, I always felt v throughout everything, I always felt very spiritually connected, and I was like, "So what is so do what with that? What am I supposed to do with that?" And I heard you, and I was like, "Okay." You know, I gave an opening. I respect you, and I respected you then, and I was like, "Okay, I'm here to hear it, but I don't really know what that looks like, what that means." But then, like, literally, not even a month later, it was, like, shortly after, I flew into Miami, got on a red eye, got there Friday morning, and Freddie's like, "Oh, Ellie's, on a journey." And I was like, "A journey? Like, what do you what he went somewhere?" And she started describing to me about, like, plant medicine journey, and I think it was maybe, like, your 2nd or 3rd one. It was,
Yeah.
you know,
It was
you
earlier in the
I think
process.
I think it was your 2nd one because she said she was describing to me. I said, "What is it?" She goes, "I don't really know what it is, but I just know that, like, he came home and he said he saw things that he wasn't able to see before, and he's been a better husband and a better father since he came home." But that's all I she's that's pretty much all she knew, like, that she shared with me in that, like, blurb of an explanation. And then, like, we conversation got carried into something else, and an hour or 2 later, her phone rings, and it was you calling. And she's like, "That's so weird that he's calling in the middle of his journey. He doesn't usually even have his phone on him." And she picks up the phone, and you said to her, you probably I don't know if you remember what you said to her, if you were and you said to her, "Ask Tani if she wants to come do a plant medicine journey next weekend this coming weekend. They're having one just for women." And she asked me, and I did not know what that looked like, what I all I knew was what she told me, like, that you did a journey and you saw things that you hadn't seen before, and it was helping you become a better person and a better husband and a better father. And I was like, so it really wasn't even what she said to me. It was like, because there really wasn't enough information to make a decision. Do I want to jump in and do something like this? But the second the question got asked, like, every single cell in my body, every single part of my gut and my spirit, every part of me was like screaming yes. And I just trusted it. I just trusted it. And I was like, "Okay, yeah, I want to. I'll do it." And I just took a leap of just going with what was a screaming yes. And that was a huge turning point for me with when it comes to that victim um, state of being that I had been living in for a long time. And everything started to shift from there in a big way. I I can't really it's a combination like with plant medicine, it's such a combination of like it's mysterious in a way how the plants work. I can't really say, "Oh, it was this thing, it was that thing, the other thing." But something huge shifted inside of me. And one thing it did show me was I saw a vision of me, my ex husband, and my 2 daughters in a circle. And there was beautiful peace between all of us. And it was like everything was healed. Everything was healed. And I didn't even go into that journey with like an intention of, "Ah, I want to heal everything between, me and my ex-husband, make peace." I just went in like completely on faith, like, I don't know, something about this feels right. I'm doing it. And so I wasn't pinpointing an area of my life that I wanted to focus on. And it showed me this vision. And I remember while I was seeing the vision, I was asking the plant, like the medicine, I was asking, like, uh, I don't understand. Like, that's possible? Like, is that possible? And then I'm hearing, like, yeah, like, that's possible. And I was like, really? I was like, wow, just opened up the channel of possibility for that to be. And when I came home, like, just miracles started to happen in that area of my life. And in all areas of my life. But the huge shift that of shifting from the path of I'm powerless, victim of my circumstances, uh, life just keeps throwing things at me, um, to I have a say in it. I have
Right.
a say in it.
There's a choice. There's a
There's a
choice somewhere.
choice. There's a choice.
Yeah. I think like many people um, talk about, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning,
Mhm.
and it's considered like a lot of people like will write top 50 books, top 20 books, top 100 books ever written, and they talk about Man's Search for Meaning. But the irony is that his model of therapy, logos therapy, has not been adopted in any meaningful way. It's like
Mhm.
people will make fun of Freud
Mhm.
and put Viktor Frankl on a pedestal, but Freud's model is practiced in some degree, or maybe some take criticism. We're not lying down on a couch and we're sitting up, but his like general theory is practiced.
Mhm.
And Viktor Frankl, which is held up as this amazing idea, very few therapists actually have the gumption to ever tell their client, like, hey, find meaning in your story.
Right.
Find meaning in your story. If you find meaning, you can get through everything. And another level of that, a big part of his story was that there's always a choice, right? There's
Mhm.
always a space between stimulus and response. And that's where the human lives, right? The human doesn't control the world, but with the human, like human meaning as opposed to an animal, that a human has the ability to make a choice. An animal doesn't.
Mhm.
And that ability to make a choice doesn't always come in the sense of, can I go to dinner tonight?
Mhm.
Can I, fly somewhere and not fly somewhere? Sometimes we're held up in different ways, physically,
Right.
financially, by responsibilities, but
Right.
there's always this choice. And then he obviously used the extreme example of the Holocaust to make that point that even there, with no food and no freedom and no everything else, there was the freedom of his perspective. And
Right.
could I find meaning in this journey? At the time when I spoke about spirituality, I had found that therapy got me to a certain point, but I
Mhm.
was still very much in addiction.
Mhm.
And when I moved to the 12 steps, all of a sudden the sponsors or the guides that I was talking to there were willing to challenge me on a completely different level. And one of those was, like I say, like, victimhood is the idea that, all these bad things are happening to me.
Right.
And the change will be all these things are happening for me, right? Like more of that
Mhm.
positive thing, which I think the 12 steps allowed for me to see the world in a more spiritual way, which is there's a guide, there's a creator, I'm cared for, and all of this has been precisely orchestrated and is being coordinated in order to bring me to a certain destination.
Mhm.
And then I think plant medicine kind of pushes you through that next step where it's not to or for me. It's like all these things are happening through me. Like the self can just be completely, I don't want to say completely obliterated. Our selves are definitely very present, but you see the potential for the first time. I saw the
Right.
potential for the first time for brief moments for the self to be obliterated and
Mhm.
then for something to happen through us. And that's
Yeah.
like, wow, like this is not,
Yeah.
this is nuts.
Yeah.
Like I was there for the show, but it had nothing to do with it.
Right. Yeah.
But it did happen through me. Right. So yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah, it's a wild journey. I just wanted to put a little meat on the bone of what I meant then by spirituality, and then kind of
mhm.
like it just
Yeah.
evolves.
Oh, I understand now, but,
Yeah, not only for you. Like
but yeah.
I wanted you to forget the mics. I
Yeah.
don't forget the mics.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
meaning I
So
understand there's an audience that I'm talking to. That's all.
okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Did we forget the mics during this at some point?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Good job.
Okay, gotcha. Good. Good.
You're doing it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So it was my process of shifting was um it's been a journey. It's been a journey, and, like, pulling on that thread that I spoke of earlier,
Mhm.
of the strength that I always carried in my role as a mother, uh, I started to pull on it and spread it to other areas of my life. What
So let's do this just
Okay.
in the interest of time. I want
Yeah.
to like shorten. There's obviously a lot more we can talk about, a lot more we can pull apart, but I do want to get to kind of what you do today.
Yeah.
So, um, I mean, recently you started hosting different cacao ceremonies and hot base ceremonies, and
Mhm.
you help people with integration on plant medicine. You'll
Mhm.
travel to other countries, work with them on plant medicine. So I wanted to speak to more about what you do. Is it specifically women you work with, or only
No,
men?
I work with men and women. Um, I do a monthly circle just for women where I do a new moon cacao ceremony
This is in LA.
in LA. Yeah, I've been doing that for maybe a year and a half now. I started off not doing it every single month, and then started to realize that people really were uh, getting such nourishment from that space and wanting more of it. So I started to be consistent with it and opening it to an every month a monthly
Right.
ceremony.
Consistency is key.
Yeah.
That's like what a mother provides different than amongst other things, one of the things
Mhm.
a mother provides different than a father is the consistency,
Right.
right? It's like that.
Yeah.
But even with everything, with the podcast, with our events, with everything we found, if it's not consistent, it basically doesn't exist because someone can't rely on it. It's not a dependable avenue.
Right. I remember you were the one who said to me, like, if you bring consistency to it, people will know they can rely on it. And when you said that to me, it just made a lot of sense. And I said the whole reason why I was from the start opening up these spaces for people is uh so that they know it's there and they have it, that they can rely on it.
Exactly.
So, okay, let me just get more consistent so that it's there in a way where, people know, oh, that's coming for me. Like I have that, one more week and I'll be able to be in that sort of space.
Exactly.
And I'll also part of the work that I'm doing now is teaching people how to create this space for themselves and within their own surroundings as well, because you don't need to wait until you're in a ceremony space or in a space that was created for you to have this sort of experience. You can create it for yourself
Right.
too.
A big like message of mine lately has been, a lot around the Adama retreat. We do this is that oftentimes, even when people get into plant medicines, right, there's a lot of beauty that comes from there, a lot of growth, but it feels like, okay, what do I do until the next one?
Hmm.
And in fact, that's not needed at all. There are a lot of things like you're talking about that could be done to connect on some level to those spaces
Yeah,
without going there. It doesn't have to be a
exactly.
whole trip, a whole weekend, a whole to do.
Yeah.
It can happen in a few minutes. Tonight after this, and the reason why they're short a little bit is at the House of More. Myself and the gentleman Michael Klein, we're going to be hosting a little hot bay ceremony, and that's it. It's a way to connect and reconnect
Mhm.
to the space, both for myself and the others there. And no psychedelic medicines, no big journey,
Mhm.
just a little music, a little tobacco, and off we go.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a big, and I recognize that, and I've recognized that for some time. And a big part of what I'm focusing now to give to people is um, supporting people and teaching people how to integrate and embody everything it is that they are learning and have learned and have seen and remembered through, very much through plant medicine work, but also in general in life. Because we oftentimes do, even without plant medicine, like we'll see a truth, we'll understand something about our life, but then it's like, okay, we saw it for a moment. Now, what are we going to do with it?
Correct.
So it's great to see it, and it's very exciting in the moment.
Right. You
Okay,
feel I can do this
it's
forever.
like, wow, yeah, and but then you go back to your life and like all the routines and the same environments that you're used to, and are you able to carry that into your life? Are you able to bring it into your body? So that's a lot of my focus now as well, because I recognize that, especially with plant medicine work, um, it's all very exciting to see what the plants gift us to show us. Uh, the real work really is taking it home with you. Taking it home with you. Okay, what are you going to do with that seeing, with that knowing, with that remembering? How are you going to um you going to utilize or not utilize that gift? Yeah.
Right. I had a vision on one of my first ayahuasca journeys, and it was a vision of myself and Frady kind of as one, you know?
Mhm.
And I remember like watching this, I was like, how can two become one? And then like the vision ended. It was like, don't ask questions. You're just seeing something. And it showed me more stuff about the potential of our relationship, right? Like a
Mhm.
vision.
Mhm.
And it's been on like, I mean, I guess I easily could have forgotten it, right? But I haven't, and I've chose not to. I want to, like, I want to remember it, but it's been there's two sides to that vision,
Mhm.
and I've definitely been tormenting Frady with it, in the sense that on the one hand, there's like, hey, that's possible, kind of similar when you mentioned the sitting in a circle with your um, ex husband and your two daughters, and saying like, wow, complete peace is possible. Before that vision, that like that level of attainment doesn't even seem doable. It's like not even on the
Right.
menu.
Right, it's not
It's like,
even you can't even imagine it as a possibility.
right, hey,
Yeah.
if we're sitting in the same room at their wedding, like that's pretty good, right? Like at their wedding, we're both there. Like we did great. Congratulations. We did better than most couples who got divorced.
Right.
And like that level of peace almost seems not possible. So saw certain things about our relationship, which is like the way a couple can feel together, the closeness, um the oneness, right?
Mhm.
All of that. And on the one hand, there's this vision that gets created for us, like, hey, this is possible.
Mhm.
On the other hand, is the work that
Right.
gets demanded
Right.
from us. That's what I mean. I've been tormenting Frady by it because, in a sense, it's like, hey, this is possible for us,
Right.
and the knowledge that I sit with, and as I remember that experience each time, is what's the word you taught me at the beginning of this? Re-remember,
Mhm.
right? So as I re-remember that each time, it's like, hey, this is possible. Like this is actually possible for us.
Mhm.
And then I'll come back to it, it's like, hey, like, there's something off. She's like, what are you talking about? We're doing great. Like, you should talk to all my friends. And I'm like, no, like I saw the thing. I saw the thing. I
Yeah.
know the gap.
Yeah.
Right. So um, the reason I bring that up is that sometimes like a simple vision in a ceremony can turn into like a lifetime of work.
That's what it is. I mean, many times that's what it is. I after my first ayahuasca experience, I watched a little YouTube of Gabor Mate speaking about ayahuasca, and he was saying that ayahuasca gives you 2 gifts. Okay, it gives more than 2, but he was speaking about 2 specific gifts. He says, "Ayahuasca will give you a vision and show you what's possible, and then after ceremony for a brief period, you experience that possibility, and that will fade
Right.
over whether it's a week, 2 weeks." After my first ayahuasca experience, it was a month. I had a full month of the experience of living my life in with complete lightness and joy, and I had removed all the burdens of the ancestral suffering that I'd been carrying my whole life, and for a month I was like, "Oh my god, this is insane. I never thought this was possible." I'm like, I took 100,000 tons off my shoulders, and I didn't even recognize the world anymore. Everything looked and felt completely different. And after a month, all of a sudden I'm in the shower one morning and I start getting this feeling of heaviness, and I'm like, but I know that feeling. Where is that coming from? It was a Sunday morning. There was nothing sad. There was nothing, no drama. Everything was great. Like, why am I feeling this feeling? And then I was like, I remembered what Gabor Mate said. I was like, oh my gosh, like the gift that ayahuasca gave me lasted a full month, but it's fading. It's
Right.
on its way out. Like, and so he was saying that, so that vision that it gives you of what's possible, it gives you the gift of that so um, that you know it's possible, and then when you go back to your life, you're here, the vision of what's possible is here. That's where your work is.
Correct.
So it's showing you a line of a path to get there. So now you get on that path and you do the work, you do the work, you do the work, you do the work. And it's showing you that when you consistently do that work through your life, what the reward is going to be. But it doesn't mean, and very often it's a lifetime of work. So, you know, the thing about like plant medicine, it shows you that and you think, oh my God, I can have this, I can have it tomorrow, I can have it tonight. Just remember the vision is just the guide to where the work is.
Oh,
And
what
yeah,
if someone wants to work with you, how do they find you?
I'm on Instagram.
Hmm.
So Netanya Light, and people
No
can message
underscores, no
me.
hyphens, no.
No, just Netanya Light, and people can message me directly on there. Yeah.
Good. Awesome. Okay, I'm sure they will. So, I'm sure they will. I think that, I think everyone, like, I think all families should do this thing where you put a microphone and cameras. We didn't record, right, Tyler? There was nothing recorded. Right? It was a little right, that all should do this thing so people get to know each other because, um, yeah, it's neat because, I mean, although um, we're family, like, these kind of conversations don't happen. I learned a lot about you in this conversation that I didn't know previously. So it's cool.
I had a feeling. No, I envisioned this and at this conversation, I was like, and exactly what you said, I was thinking about it and I was like, it's really like crazy how sometimes like the people who are closest to us, we can just like miss chunks of them by not creating a space to like have real conversations without interruptions, without, logistics and real life stuff, having, and just sitting and talking.
Right.
Yeah,
That's really what this allows. The podcast is total BS. Like, it's nothing to do with anything. So I
yeah,
keep trying to explain it, but has nothing to do with anything.
yeah,
But this was useful whether or not it gets posted. That's why I said before it turned on. It has nothing to do with if it gets posted and other people like it, like, cool. But they become the excuse for this to happen because these conversations obviously don't happen enough. So, like, no phones, no distractions, no anything else.
yeah.
So it was neat. There's definitely a lot more in your story. We definitely can pull apart a lot of other details and a
Hmm.
lot more to could have spoken about. But there is a hot bay ceremony in 20 minutes,
That's yeah.
so
Okay.
we will let the signs of the universe let us know that this has come to an end. Thank you so much for joining us. You feel good about it?
Yeah, I feel really good. Thank you for inviting me and thank you for this conversation. It's really
Absolutely.
nice
Thank
to
you.
sit with you and talk.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you. I'm sure it's going to help many people if you choose to release it.
that would be beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.